Thank you for tuning in Voice of Reason Boston. My name is Tamisha Civil, your host. This morning we have our wonderful guest, Philecia Harris. Philecia is a librarian and also the founder and creator of Black Directory. We're going to get to know Philecia today and what inspired her to create the Black Directory, which gives Black entrepreneurs and businesses the opportunity to be on a directory where people can find them much easier. So thank you for tuning in to Voice of Reason. My name is Tamisha Civil. I'm your host. Philecia, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. If you can introduce yourself to our viewers that are listening in on WEZE 590 AM, and as well as Facebook and Instagram. If you can introduce yourself for me, I'm happy to have you. Thank you for coming.
Well, we have the Black Directory. I am currently the owner, the operator, the cook and bottle washer, but I'm also working with a young lady named Stephanie Garand, who grew up in Cambridge with me in the area. But we started the Black Pages. We are a directory at www.theblackdirectory.com. And we also have a printed version. We missed last year, but a printed version that we have out and that we distribute about 5,000 copies in the Boston area.
Wow, that's wonderful. And what else, do you have any other profession? What school did you go to? And how did this all come about? Were you always in Boston? Did you move into Boston? If you can tell a little bit more about you.
Well, my family's originally from Cambridge. My mother's family is from Cambridge way back. My father's from the DC area, and we grew up in the Air Force and we traveled around, but we settled here in Cambridge, my mother's hometown. Mm-hmm. And she was an entrepreneur, her brothers and sisters. We had a candy shop up the street. My aunt had a hair shop, and my grandfather had a fish and chip shop on the corner. But I went away to DC and opened a cafe. I called it Coffee, COFFY Cafe, after the Pam Grier character. And then I came home. So I started out as a librarian for the Cambridge Public Library in '91 and was at the Central Square Library, the main library, Valenti branch. And I did that for about 11 years. And then I worked at the Young Achievers Charter School as a children's librarian. And then I went off to DC and ran the cafe a lot like a library, where I was connecting with teachers and community people, and they didn't have money. They could use the space for free to have events and rallies and different kind of activities. And then I came home. I missed my family. I was also having medical issues, and I said, you know what? I love Boston. DC was absolutely wonderful. 10 years, if it wasn't for my family. And I came back to DC and finished up with the Boston Public Library. I am now at the Roxbury Branch Library, formerly Dudley Branch Library, and working with my first love, which is children's librarian. So I work with kids and reading, anything dealing with literacy, and getting anybody in the community excited about reading and literature, and connecting with schools and after schools.
That's awesome. And what's the mission and the goal behind the Black Directory?
Well, really, the mission is to promote Black businesses in any way possible. When I came home, I went looking for the Black Directory. I went looking for Black businesses. I was in Codman Square and walking down the street, and I said, where's the Jamaican joint that used to be here? Or and finally, I just started talking to people. Well, and I would ask, do you know of any Black businesses here? Do you know of any Black business here? I found a hair shop, a beauty supply shop, but I couldn't find anything else. I found like 2 others. And so really the mission is to bring Black businesses in the forefront, to find them, to get them out of the corners and crevices where they are. I also noticed that a lot of the shops that I found didn't have an internet presence. And I thought, well, there are new people coming into the city, and someone might say, well, where can I get my hair done? Right. Where can I do X, Y, and Z? And you automatically go to Google, and if a Black company doesn't have a Google presence, then there's a whole spectrum of people that might miss them. So our real mission was to bring African-American businesses to the forefront, help people to find them. Anybody willing to to patron Black businesses can figure out where they are. And the librarian in me said, okay, start collecting information, start putting all this together so people can find it.
And being an entrepreneur yourself, did that help you create this idea and how you can help more people of color in the community to get as a resource, to provide that kind of resources, not only you having the experience, but for them as well, to help them, to get them the exposure that they need?
I think being an entrepreneur helped because I started thinking in terms of businesses.
Mhm.
So what I did first was I just started walking into businesses and talking to people and asking them what they needed and asking them what sort of support they wanted. And because I had a restaurant, I started talking to different restaurants, and I'd walk into a store and I'd see an old menu or somebody needed a menu, and I'd say, well, I'll sit down with you and I'll make the menu for you. And then I would
Mhm.
discover an older woman in a mom and pop business, and she didn't know how to reprogram her register. And so I said, okay, I'll help you reprogram your register. And then I would go out and I would buy menus and programs and help put boards up and start organizing. And I was going from business to business, and I thought, this is really time consuming. I'm helping one person, but then the other person that I talk to over here needs assistance and someone over there. So first of all, I started using my skills and abilities as an entrepreneur. And then I said, you know
Mhm.
what? I need to kind of bring this together. I need to bring this together some way. What can I do that where I can help a number of people in one place? And slowly the database started to form, the idea of bringing this information together. So the entrepreneur in me said, okay, I'll take my money, I'll start
Mhm.
an internet database, I'll start this online, and then I will start to print. One of the things that I was looking for when I came back was the New England Black pages, for example.
Right.
I couldn't find it anywhere. And I started asking around. I went over in Cambridge and I talked to, who used to be Denise Simmons, I used to get it
Mhm.
from her. She used to be the mayor, and she also had her office where she would always give away the Black pages. And she said, I haven't seen it.
Wow.
And eventually I went to the Boston Public Library and I found out they stopped printing in 96. And so I decided, you know what, let me see who I can go and find. Let me see if I can go and find these folks and see what I can do to help them or to revive this or do whatever I can do. And I couldn't find them. So I started looking around at other databases and other places. For example, the Real Black Wall Street, who was an online database, and I supported her, and she had a GoFundMe page that I supported. And one of the biggest challenges was um, every time I saw a new database, they didn't
Mhm.
they didn't have more than 30 entries for Boston. So there are
Wow.
a lot of databases out there, or for New England or Massachusetts, and nobody had Vermont, New Hampshire. And the old Black pages, that was Thelma Sullivan. I later found out Thelma Sullivan was the original person to do the Black pages, and I couldn't find her. I did eventually later find some family and try to contact them, but it kind of didn't pan out. But so I looked for the Black pages, couldn't find the Black pages, and decided to create something of my own, and decided to create something that was bigger than just 30 businesses. So
Mhm.
right now we have over 700 businesses, nonprofits, organizations, artists, performers, looking for plumbers and auto places and car shops. So it's huge. It's a huge
Right.
database of information, which is different from what else I've seen online. It's like kind of like a Black Yelp. So
Yes.
so we have the database online, and then we have the print booklet that's going to be coming again this year. We had to stop. And at some point, I would love to merge with a larger database, just have this information for anybody who wants to use it, anybody who wants to take it on.
And it's funny that you were talking about this because during this week, Boston Globe had an interview with a couple of people from Boston talking about how there are a lot of Boston is made half of Boston is made up of Black people, but yet it does not represent that side of Boston. Why do you think there is such an issue when it comes to the Black culture not being exposed properly and being able to have the exposure that they need, whether it's in business and culture, just anything in general. Why do you think we have such a setback when it comes to things like this?
On so many different levels. I used to know somebody from Chicago, and he always said, one of the problems with Boston is that nobody Black seems to own anything. So there's
Right.
nobody promoting our stuff. And it's really interesting because at one time, I remember maybe 20, 30 years ago, Bob the chef got a bank loan, and it was the largest bank loan that had ever been given to a Black business in
Mm,
Massachusetts. And I remember in the Boston area, I remember thinking that is just so sad.
right.
So we have our places, we have our organizations, people come from out of town and they can't find us because
Hmm.
we're not in the mainstream. We can't get a shop downtown. In a lot of ways, we're relegated to a small area. Um, Back in the 80s, Hank Phillippe Ryan had this big expose where she found that African Americans could not get home loans. So
Right.
they ended up owing loans to these shady companies that took their money and didn't do the work. And she discovered it was Mattapan, Dorchester, and Roxbury.
Mm,
So you had people who would own their houses for 30 years,
that's
should have been
true.
able to get a homeowner loan to revitalize, to pick up their family, and they couldn't do it. So in some ways, we're relegated to certain areas and we can't seem to move, or we can't seem to get into, or we can't seem to rent from, or we can't seem to get licensed for. And so we stay in our small area where we're not. One of the most difficult things with my booklet is trying to find plumbers and people with licenses. And I
Yeah.
meet young people saying, well, I went to school and I got this license, but you know any plumbers? And I'm looking around and I'm asking, and I'll meet plumbers and they say, oh, but I'm not
Mm,
licensed.
right.
So that, I think, is another thing that can harm us. And I did meet a woman in a library from the South, and she said down South, she was in charge of licensing, and I can't remember, she was a contractor licensing for construction. And in the Boston area, there was only one company that did it. Where she was from, everybody did it, multiple people did it. And you had to go through that company, and if they didn't want you to have the license, they
They're
wouldn't
not
train
going
you.
to get it. Right. Right.
So on so many levels, our folks are missing out. There's so much
Hmm.
institutionalized racism that doesn't give people of color access on every conceivable level.
And the thing that we need to realize is the leadership. If we look at the leadership in our communities or wherever we live, it's always the same group of people that are in the forefront, that are the leaders, and nothing ever changes. And they're not bringing attention to the issue. If they're not bringing the awareness, they're part of the problem. So we've been stagnant in so many ways. Either it's by business, money, definitely, and leadership. So that's why it's important for young people to always go forward, regardless of the circumstances, because you will get there no matter how long it takes. You will get there, but it needs to start now. And we need to change our mentality to look around us. Hey, one, you need to vote to make sure that you're making the change that your community needs. Because if you don't vote, this is what happens. We have the same leadership. We have the same leadership. And when that leadership doesn't change, your community doesn't change. The circumstances doesn't change. But I think a lot of people now, given this election 2020, I think a lot of people now is woke, and they are learning, they're looking around them, and their eyes are open to see that, this cannot happen. This cannot keep going on generation and generations to come. So I think we're a little better than where we were before. But I see some changes happening.
I think you're right with that. The BLM movement has opened people's eyes so much more. And once they
Hmm.
see certain things on camera, they're willing to believe, and they're willing to listen in a way that they weren't before. There's still a lot of people who won't listen,
Right.
but there's so much that needs to change. Um, the we already talked about the Federal Reserve, and they mentioned certain things about money and finances and economics. But I think the BLM movement has opened people's eyes. More
Hmm.
people are woke, and more people are ready for change. But I think, as you say, we really now need the leadership, and that's the hard part, because
Yeah.
the incumbent is so much more difficult to unseat. And the newcomers, they have a really hard time trying to break in. It's a lot
Right.
of work, and you have to come back more again and again until more people know who you are and more people can see you. I know that, for example, Mayor Walsh at one point decided to have a special cadet program so we could have more Black or police officers of color and
Mhm.
firefighters of color. And then the police department said, oh, no, 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 we're not going to do this cadet program. And Walsh says, okay, fine. So we had one way to start bringing people in. And if you're a veteran, or if, a lot of the guys in the suburb will go out and they'll make sure that they join the reserves 1 or 2 years so they get veteran status. And then your point spread for veteran status is so much more.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden you can't get people of color, you can't get women into the police force. So
Hmm.
leadership has to change, laws have to change, participation, and we have to keep voting, because
Yeah.
every time something moves and every time something changes, it affects everything else.
And speaking of BLM, also known as Black Lives Matter movement, do you think it had an impact on, what you wanted to do when it comes to the Black directory page,
Um,
or brought more exposure to it?
I think right now, I have just redone my website. The blackdirectory.com is just about finishing up. And we put a BLM page and we put different kinds of information. And I think what has happened now is that people are actually looking.
Right.
So Yelp is going to start having a page. For example, we just had last year, we had the Black Restaurant Challenge, which was
Hmm.
again this year. So BLM has brought a lot more of this to the forefront, and now people aren't looking at sort of, oh, that's just a Black thing over there. They actually
Hmm.
want to participate. So now when we get this information out, it's not just Black people and the Black dollar. One of the things that I would like to make sure is that Black people get the white dollar, or the dollar from other ethnic groups and other people. And I think they're more willing, because you go to Franklin Park and you only see African Americans, or you only see Black people at the different festivals and fairs, but you go to an Asian festival downtown and 80% of the people are other ethnic groups, are white.
Right.
So you
Right.
think, well, why can't the white dollar come into the Black community, come into Dudley, come into other places? And so I think now I don't have to convince as much. And so maybe the next step is to start to get everybody putting money into the Black community and Black
Right.
businesses and Black people. And there are people now who are actively looking. So I will
Yeah.
go outside of that realm and just start recruiting for other people.
And okay, so my other question would be, is for those who are tuning in or watching our segment on Facebook or even Instagram, and there are other cultures looking and tuning in and hearing our interview, and they're probably saying, well, why is there such a big issue about Black businesses or supporting Black businesses, or why is it making a big deal now? What would you say about that?
You mean as opposed to before, or just a big deal
Or as
period?
opposed to before? Yes.
Um, I think we should have been making a big deal the entire time. What I think is interesting, when you look at Boston, we had Black businesses in Black neighborhoods. And when desegregation happened, we had the whole Sugar Hill up and down Mass Ave. When desegregation happened in this area, African Americans were able to suddenly go downtown and use halls in different places, but nobody came back into the Black community.
Right.
So it's always been important. It's always been important for the money to flow both ways, but it really just flows one way out of the Black community. So if you're
Mhm.
serious about BLM and you want to say that you support you support Black businesses, you support Black people, you also have to support Black businesses. There are people who say, well, I would never go to a Black doctor, or they're just not used to the idea. Well,
Exactly.
if you want to start acknowledging other people and other ethnic groups, why not go to a Black dentist?
Hmm.
Why not go to a Black chiropractor, or use a Black plumber?
Right. And one of the things that, I talked to several other people before, even therapists, one of the biggest issue in the Black community is that the reason why we don't seek mental health professionals is because we don't know that there are Black mental health professionals out there. And one of the reasons why is there isn't there's not enough exposure exposing those doctors out now. And I know there's a Dr. Jackman. She created a page for mental health Black professionals to, for people to search for, or Black professionals to seek therapists. And these are the things that, people are doing now because the lack of exposure of what the Black culture is providing in our community. And one of the good things about your directory is oftentimes when people live in the community, they don't know what's around them. When I was growing up in Mattapan, my parents own a home, 2-family home in Mattapan, but the only business that I can remember was that Burger King right off of Rockdale Street. But there were all other mom and pop shops, cultural mom and pop shops that were around the Mattapan area. If it wasn't Farmers Market, it was only Burger King. But I say this to say this is there's a lot of people who come from different countries who are not comfortable with the regular food that are being sold around, the markets. So they prefer to go to their local mom and pop shops that have ingredients that are strictly from their culture, that they continue to use ingredients for their food. So I think it's important, to have directories such as this to let people know what is around them, because not everybody uses the same kind of, not everyone goes to the same stores, and not everyone is not ready to break out of that cultural mold where they're used to, cooking different types of food. So this is just to put that out there, how the Black directory is a good resource for the community, because there are a lot of Black owners and entrepreneurs, but they just don't get the exposure that they need. Some of them don't even have money to even create a website like you indicated. And we know now we're living in a social media era where everything is online, but some of them are barely able to pay the rent where they're paying to keep their stores open, but doesn't have the knowledge. Some of them are too old to have social media access, or just being able to get the funds that they need or economic resources to keep their stores open. So we have all these issues, but simply having a resource such as yours can help a lot of people dramatically.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the goals that I had was to start getting young people. So for example, I hired young people to help and start adding businesses to the Black pages and calling people and walking into stores and taking photographs. And so for example, with one person, I talked to her nieces and nephews and helped them with a web page and showed them how to do Facebook. So I'm also looking for volunteers. At some point, I would like to get enough volunteers that we could go into a shop and help paint it and get it set for the new year, or on a different project, or maybe even get to a point where we have enough money where we can help a startup, or in the same way that people give away scholarships for school, maybe we can give away some sort of scholarship for a new business. And then everybody in the community can come and help with certain skills or abilities that they have just to get you off the ground, because it's hard to pay for that accountant and the person to come and fix this and the person to come and do that, or maybe you need an extra hand on the weekends. And there are plenty of people who want to volunteer for different kinds of things. Why not for a Black business? I've seen it work. I've seen it happen.
That's a great point. Because we have a lot of young people, or even adults, who want to start their own business. They're afraid to do that because, one, they may not know how to do it. Two, it could be too expensive for them to just leave what they're normally doing, for what they're used to doing for many years, and then to start and take a leap of faith to start their own business. And two, and three, it's the support. Most of it is lack of support, lack of being able to get someone to help you and point you to the right direction. So that's a great starting point to help people to get into the entrepreneurship field. And also, did you have any issues running into, starting the Black directory page? Did you have any issues? What did you stumble across? And what did you notice when creating this page?
Um, I think the first issue was just originally I wanted to put the page together and hand
Hmm.
it over to somebody else. And when I saw the Black Wall Street, I went and I said, okay, I started calling her or filling out information. And I decided I would put whatever I found into the database over there or the database over there or other databases. And I settled on her database. But I started to find that nobody really got back to me. And again, there really wasn't much going on in the Boston area. So
Hmm.
the big challenge for me was to make sure that people saw New England. There are a lot of databases with businesses in Texas and tons of Southerners and businesses everywhere. So it was a real challenge to go out and find people and kind of like you say, pull them out of the cracks.
Hmm.
So I would go and look in Vermont and just look around Vermont and go into stores and talk to people. And then they would tell me about somebody else and they would tell me about somebody else. And the next thing I know, I would find museums in Vermont or Black museums in Vermont, um,
Hmm.
a Black storekeeper or a Black wine company. So some of the challenges were just in finding these different companies, and then also just the challenge of making sure that we put people into the database and got them out there.
Right, right. That's good to know, because I truly believe that there is more than what we actually see. And
Exactly.
it's just having that person or the financial resources to compile all these information together to make it available for those that are in our community,
And
because it is very important, and it reflects, of the culture, how we've had so many setbacks, and for us to be in 2020, we are making steps, but they're not drastic steps in order for us to change the way things have been for a long time.
yeah, yeah, it's been kind of difficult. Um, Part of what's going on with what I'm doing is that I've been using my own money.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I think right after the elections, I was really concerned and really upset and trying to figure out what was going on. And I decided I would just use my own money to do this.
Yeah.
And part of it, and at first I thought, well, at some point I could start selling to businesses. But I think so many businesses are struggling and so many businesses are trying to make it. I said, you know what, this is going to have to be free.
You're
Going to
right.
have to be free. And at some point it'll get large enough um, that I can start getting people to actually make donations and organizations to make donations or other businesses. So I think that's also been one sort of a little bit of a difficulty, but then not. But we've gotten to a point now where we've got 700 businesses, and that's more than the 30 that we seem to average for this area.
Right.
And more people are starting to ask this question. So thanks to maybe you and other people, I'll start to just kind of go out, get the next printing done, and just go out and start handing it out and telling people about it. And also, we really need people to go to the website.
Hmm.
Um, it's just about finished. It should say under construction, but start adding businesses. So if you
That
go
was my next question. Yeah.
so, I mean, I'd like to go to some of the universities and schools around here and just start getting young people. Just if you use a barber shop, give them a review, take some pictures. People are really quick to talk about businesses on Yelp and other social media. Go on
Right.
Facebook and really just start pushing Black businesses. If you have a good review, say it. If you don't have a good
Hmm.
review, well, but when people say, oh, well, I would use a Black such and such, but, they have to be as good as they're, so, well, of course they do. You go and you would review them and ask them for references like
Hmm.
anybody else.
Right.
You still do your work, but you also want to give someone a chance. I mean, there are plenty of businesses that you go to where you know nothing about them and you still want to give them a chance. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would implore you, go out, find a Black business, make sure you take photographs, make sure you put them on the map. And I'll show up at restaurants and I realize they don't have a Google presence. Give them a
Wow.
Google review. Put them on Google. It's not a threat to my page, but the more exposure we can give our businesses, the better off they'll be to do
Well,
whatever we can for them.
I'll tell you this, it starts with people like you who are genuine, who are looking to do something and better their community with nothing in return. If you tell me that you're putting your own money to this, most often people don't, because they don't have the money or the resources to start something and invest into themselves. But this is something that is very important. I would encourage those who are watching us or tuning in to go support this page, and we will give that webpage towards the end of the segment. But it's important to encourage those who are looking and looking to elevate their community by providing resources such as this, especially where you can get a plethora of businesses out in the community of Boston. There are so many Black businesses, but they don't get the recognition. They don't get the exposure they need because there is no resource such as what we are talking about now. Now, given that we're in a holiday right now, how can we support Black businesses during Christmas season or the holiday season to help them strive it through this pandemic? What are some of your thoughts when it comes to businesses around this Christmas season?
One of the things you can do on my webpage, I also list other directories. For example, you mentioned the psychiatrist and how
Mhm.
she's looking to promote other businesses, but I've just started an events page. So if you put your event or if you see an event, if you're on Facebook, go to the Black directory, bridging the bridging the economic divide online to Facebook, and post an event. If you know of a friend that's having an event, post an event, post on our Instagram, post, or post it actually on the website so that
Mhm.
people can go there. Each business on our website, in a sense, gets its own page. So we, in the same way as Yelp, you have photograph, you have a map, you have the name, address, and any other kind of pictures that someone provides. It's almost like having a small website. So
Right.
you can help to put someone in there. But look around at the events. There's Black Market. There's all kinds of things going on in Dudley. People online having special events. If you go to the Black pages, the Black directory online, you will see that I follow just about any organization, any event that I can. So if you look and see what sorts of events, what other organizations are posting, you can find even more there. But the Black Market is every single weekend up to the holidays, and that's in Dudley Square, as well as all the other businesses there. There are tons of Black-owned businesses in the Dudley Square area. And also up and down Mattapan on Blue Hill Ave. Just go take a look, see what you can find. I know there's the Pink Shoe Boutique. There's
Mhm.
Unique Fashion in Dudley, which has some of the most amazing clothing and for really great prices. A lot of our stores have, and a lot of our businesses have really great prices because they are working with people from all different kinds of economic backgrounds.
And
So
what about restaurants? How can we continue? Is it, first of all, let me ask, is it possible to continue to support businesses during a pandemic? And how can we continue to support them without breaking the bank?
So everybody's got to eat, and it's
Mhm.
great that you mentioned Black restaurants. We do a listing of Black restaurants on the web page. The Black Restaurant Challenge is coming up in February, but go online. Even if you have a place in your neighborhood, give them a call, make an order, have lunch. Every now and then, what I'll do is I will pick up lunch for friends and say, okay, we're gonna subscribe to this particular business. It's a Black business that's over there on Western Ave on the edge of Cambridge. A new Jamaican restaurant just opened up on the
Mhm.
way to Watertown. So I'm going to go and pick up some food and I'll just bring it. So if my office is having an event, I will suggest a string of Black businesses or a string of Black restaurants. And we all know a lot of these restaurants also will have gift certificates. Look
Yeah.
around, find out, give a gift certificate. If it's a Black friend, if it's a white friend, anybody in between, give them a chance to try something new or a certain kind of cuisine. So do whatever you can, gift certificates, talking to shopkeepers, bringing friends over, making suggestions where you work. Um, and even if you know a small business and you work for, say, a government agency, maybe you can help them do the paperwork to get um, to get a government number so that they can, or voucher number or whatever they need so that they can
Mhm.
start catering to whatever business you're in or whatever
Right, yeah.
department that you work for in the
Mhm.
state. So every little thing helps.
And as an entrepreneur yourself, what do you know now that you did not know before?
In terms of,
Like during this pandemic, or just being like life lessons, and just creating this page because you didn't have first, did you have that opportunity when you had your business? Was there a directory available to you? And is this part of your inspiration of making sure that you're giving other business the opportunity that wasn't available to you at that time?
I think part of my inspiration was the Black pages. And when
Hmm.
I went to DC, they didn't have a Black pages, but they also have one in every three businesses is Black owned. But I think one of the first things that really pushed it, one of the first inspirations was how many Black owned business people were without hope.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them were just, they just needed some sort of support. They needed some kind of attention. And as I started talking and letting them know what I was doing, they were getting excited and they felt like they were being seen. So maybe when you go and you visit a Black business, you can tell them, hi, I'm here because I really want to support Black businesses. Let
Hmm.
them know that they're not just out there alone and that they're not just striving, because sometimes Black folks will say, well, nobody Black is supporting me or nobody cares.
Yeah.
And there are people who care,
Hmm.
but maybe they're
But they
just not paying
just,
attention or thinking about
right.
it. So if we stopped and maybe said once a week, which is hard, even
Hmm.
once a month, I'm going to go out of my way to find a Black business. Once you start, it'll become second nature and it'll become a part of you, as opposed to just taking what's here or there or what you already know. So one of the things I think I really kind of learned was how much support our businesses need from us, and how we can support them, not just with our pockets, but emotionally and mentally, and let them know
Hmm.
that we care about them and we want them to succeed. Um, and the importance of actually kind of going into a store, going into a school, going into a nonprofit and volunteering some time. Sometimes
Right.
people in shops, they're trying to do so much. If you just kind of help them, oh, I know how to type, I know word processing, I know a little bit of graphics, let me help you with your menu. Let
Hmm.
me help you with another project. Let me help you redo these shelves. Um, and I think people are really appreciative with any kind of attention and any kind of help that you give them, and people need it. So I think the really big takeaway for me was that I learned that people really needed not just monetary support, but
Right.
emotional support, and to feel like they were a part of something.
And what do you think that it is hard for African Americans to even support Black businesses? I know sometimes we're ready to buy from a luxury store that has discriminated against us in the past, but be the first one to purchase, things from that company versus just, supporting an upcoming designer or supporting our own kind in our own local area, but we're quick to go somewhere else to support. Why do you think we have that own problem within us?
It's funny, but I think sometimes it's a certain personality, or is a certain, there are people who want designer and they're only going to do designer.
Hmm.
Um, but then you kind of need to show, well, guess what? There is a Caribbean Fashion Week in Boston. And
Right.
every year I post there, and I had a friend who's a Caribbean, and she only buys Vera Wang. And she said, "What? We have a," and she's from the Caribbean originally. So number one, we automatically think in a certain way, and that's just how we're thinking. But
Hmm.
every now and then, like when you tell somebody that something exists, it interrupts, and she just loved the idea of it. So I think we just get set in our ways. We have
Yeah.
our designers, we have the things that we like to do and the places that we like to go. And it literally takes an extra step to derail and say, oh, let me not just go to that place in my phone or the Starbucks, but let me go to that Black owned coffee shop. And you
Right.
literally have to break the ice and do it. Otherwise, you just go with what you already know and go with what you're comfortable with. And it's really sad if we're not going to go out of our way. Why would we expect anybody else to? And how do we become mainstreamed as Black businesses and Black people if people aren't going to take that effort? So we
Yeah.
have to get ourselves to take that effort, because for so long, people have been taught to ignore Black businesses or ignore mom and pops. So we have to get out of our comfort zone and to normalize doing something different. And eventually,
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean Fashion Week will become the norm and everybody will know it exists and
That's true.
everybody will look forward to it.
And it's funny, we need to educate ourselves, we need to get out of our comfort zone, and we need to support those that are trying to do something for the community, and we need to stay awoke, because this is what you just said just made me think about this week. I had a conversation, someone reached out to me. I told them I'm out, can you get me a cup of coffee? I said sure, I'm gonna stop at this place. This person was like, I don't do that place. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going anywhere else. So it tells you, like, we are so brainwashed because we're used to doing these things over and over again. We let society, we let social media tell you what is good and what is not good. And we become biased of things that would even better us or help us enhance our cultures. And it's just so sad that we've come to that point. But the same way we started thinking that way is the same way I think we can unwind that, by educating ourselves. So that is very important to share, that if we want to support Black businesses, it starts within us as well. We got to break that cycle, because we hear that, oh, I'm not going to support this business for this X, Y, and Z. I can't trust them. I feel comfortable with this business. Because of what? Because of their color of their skin, because I feel like, they're not going to take advantage of me. And, growing up, we hear all these things and then we stay with it.
It's really kind of funny. There are two things that are going on there in that respect. And you're right. Because in one sense, I've even heard from Black people, and a white person probably wouldn't say this to me, I'm not going to go to no affirmative action, doctor. I'm like, wait. Affirmative action doesn't take your boards. Affirmative action doesn't sit in your classes. Affirmative action doesn't take the exams and go through what you have to go through. So people will have a prejudice because it's something that they've never seen. And all they know is some sort of stereotype. And the reality is, it's Black doctors who might look at you and know, no, that's not the right color that part of your body is supposed to be. No, this is how it works. No, that's what frostbite looks like on a Black person, and they can be more successful because they have certain experiences and certain knowledge. But we have to get past that in order to understand. And the second problem can be, because you are from a certain place and you know a certain thing, you don't have any problem saying, well, I'm not doing that because I got into an argument and such, and you think, you get into an argument in other places, but then you go back or you talk to the manager, or you think because you know a certain person and you go to the next place and they're going to do exactly the same thing.
Right.
But you still kind of carry people don't, it's sad and ironic, but we don't even judge Black businesses the way we would judge white businesses.
Talk about it. Yeah.
We're not used to it. And we still kind of look at it in such detail and picking things apart to such detail that we don't normally do when we're out in the world. So
that's absolutely true.
We can be a lot more particular with our own
that is true.
And with the general population.
And as we conclude this interview, why is it important for people to know about the Black Directory and why it was created?
It's really important to know about the Black Directory so that you can find Black businesses. And not just find Black businesses, but you can also share them, because we're in the middle of a cultural revolution right now, and we need every single tool to be successful. So one of the things I want you to think about, you did mention voting. I have a whole section on legislative people and legislators all over. So as people run, we put them in, and as people win, we put them in, so that we know who's out there. So it's incredibly important as we move forward, BLM and the Black Lives Matter movement and everything we want to do, that we have every tool and every resource at our disposal. And this is one of them. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
And why it was created.
And it was created to help Black people. It was created to help uplift us in a place where we're not doing too well.
Right.
And if we want to move forward, we have to do everything we can. I'm using information. Black market is using space. Other people are using locations in space. Someone like you is using media and giving me
Yeah.
attention, and bringing attention to the cause. So we have to work every
Together.
single and
Hmm.
together. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And and it's important because we've been left behind for so the marginalized people have been left behind for so long. And if we have the opportunity during this revolution to make an impact, to make a change, and to expose everything that has left us in the position that we've been now, the time is now. And Philecia, I thank you so much for coming on Voice of Reason Boston. I cannot thank you enough. You have a wonderful tool and resources that can help promote Black businesses across Boston. Um, if you can tell those who are tuning in and those who are entrepreneurs, where can they go and add their name and their businesses to your directory so that they can start getting exposure? And also, if is this free?
It's free.
Okay.
Absolutely free. You can give a donation, which will help, but it's free. So it's www.theblackdirectory.com. And we are at the DIR Black DIR on Twitter and at the Black DIR on Instagram. So, and then
Okay.
also on Facebook, blackdirectory.com.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will also post all these social media handles on my page as well so that we can continue to put you in the forefront and to continue to share what you're doing for our community and all other communities around Massachusetts, because you said you're going to Vermont. There are businesses in Cape Cod, and there's I think there's an
All across
uprising
England.
in Martha's Vineyard as well. There are a couple of Black businesses too. And this is very important. I thank you for what you're doing. And what touched me is that you're using your own dollar. I'm pretty sure you have your own responsibilities, but to set aside your own funds to make something for the next generation speaks a volume. And I would hope people listening in could go to the website and make a small donation of what their heart desires towards your website as well. So I thank you for coming to Voice of Reason Boston. And I thank those who are tuning in on Voice of Reason Boston Facebook, as well as Instagram and on WEZE 590 AM. So thank you all. And thank you, Philecia, for coming in.
Oh, and take a look for our Black directory. It's coming out. It'll be in all the Boston Public Libraries as well.
Absolutely. And we will share that as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.